The acute effect where you just feel like you can keep going, it probably is. Now, I'm saying probably, and scientists don't enjoy using those sort of soft adverbs, but I have to here. It's probably a result of just the fact that the brain has another fuel that it can use. And it's important to note that the brain is able to use ketones without any gatekeeper. Unlike glucose, which in certain sections of the brain requires insulin to be a gatekeeper or to open the doors. It's the key master, to kind of get into some early Ghostbusters analogies here. But it's like the key master where insulin opens the door and then the glucose can come in. And ketones don't have that regulation step. The moment ketones go up in the blood, they can cross the blood-brain barrier without any degree of regulation, just freely moving in and then the neurons burning it for fuel. I suspect that's the acute version. But then in the long term, what excites me as a guy who's middle-aged and interested in being, all this focus, Mark, these days on longevity. Yes. My priority isn't necessarily living the longest life. It's being the best grandpa. When exactly. that time comes. When that time comes, it's less how many years can I get and how good can those years be. And that's a big difference where most of the social media focus on longevity is a very selfish me sort of mentality where you have people even literally depriving their own offspring of their youth in order to promote their own selfish desire to live long and healthy.
Amen.
But yeah, I mean, it's pretty vile and vulgar, to be frank, but in a longer view, ketones enhance the expression of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is a signal that promotes neurogenesis. So you're literally promoting the growth of new neurons, which is, of course, something that becomes very difficult to do. Neurogenesis is a very limiting process, and there's much less resilience to signals that damage it as we age. All the more in women, where I think that the menopausal woman really ought to seriously consider the benefits of ketones, because as she loses estradiol, the main estrogen, estradiol itself is very neuroprotective. And when that starts to go down with menopause, she's losing one of the main signals that's helping her brain be so sharp and functioning and able to remember all of her husband's mistakes and recount them at will. And so we don't want to deprive our wives of the pleasure of remembering all of our mistakes. And so she can promote the retention of those neurons that contain all of these memories of our foibles by supplementing with exogenous ketones. So in the acute or even the chronic perspective, the brain, I submit, is the tissue that benefits the most in response to ketones.
I can attest to that. Absolutely. From a personal standpoint, you talked about hormones, and you've seen a huge focus on hormones lately. Joe Rogan, being on TRT, you see TRT in aging males. There's an anti-aging clinic on every corner in Florida. It's like Starbucks out there. And I think men are starting to understand the importance of hormones in healthy aging, the diligent use of, let's say, anabolic agents to, keep your performance up, keep your sex drive up, keep your mental acuity up, all those things. And I would guess, I live in a very nice area called Brentwood, Tennessee, right outside of Nashwood. Nashwood would be a great name for a city. Nashville. And I need more BHBs.
You're getting low.
Yeah. So what's really fascinating is just looking around my neighborhood. It's an affluent area. I would venture, you wouldn't even be able to tell these guys don't look like me. I'd probably say 30 to 50% of dudes around here are on some form of hormone replacement therapy. So looking at that, does BHB, does it have any hormonal impact, benefit? You talked about estradiol. Just looking at that, we've seen it used through, doctors who do alternative treatments are using it a lot with females with PCOS. Is there any connection to BHB and hormonal stability? I'm just kind of shooting off the hip here.
Yeah. In fact, let's just start with the women because you mentioned them, and we can cite a specific study. Just about 2 months ago, a paper was published that documented the use of exogenous ketones in the absence of any other dietary change improved every clinical outcome related to PCOS in a group of women. So this is direct human evidence just published within, I think, maybe the last 3 months, but I don't think any further back than that. And once again, that was just a ketone electrolyte, the most affordable, accessible of the BHB options.
So we call them BHB salts.
Yep, that's right.
So
yep. And I don't always say salt just because people get afraid of salt.
Yeah.
And even though I think that is very misplaced, I think the whole war on salt that's been waged over the past 50 or 60 years is ludicrous.
It's terrible.
Even still, I try to, people love the sound of electrolyte, and you say salt and they think, oh, my doctor told me to avoid salt. So it's just semantics.
Just to give background, BHB, when it's produced, is attached to a mineral, sodium, potassium, magnesium, or calcium. So, and the reason they do that is that's just how they did it. In the future, they also have things called BHB acids, which are basically just BHB in water, I would say. And those are not attached to a salt. Those are pure BHB. So, and in the future, will there be a way to produce those without salts? I mean, yes. I mean, we're still in essentially diapers in the applications and ways we could use this, but the acids are a huge breakthrough, because that's what you see in things like Rev 7, which is a energy drink without caffeine. And you see it in reaction energy drink is another one that uses it. And you're going to see a lot of energy drinks start using that. It's easy to flavor, as long as it wouldn't taste good in chocolate, because, it's acid, but it's going to taste good in any kind of lemon. Yeah, it's very tart. It's very tart, but the salts are decently, the way I see this, and then we'll kind of go to application if you have a couple minutes. So the way I see BHB is where creatine is, where people are going to buy just tubs of BHB, tubs of it, just plain, because it's pretty flavorless in a powder form. You can mix it in a protein shake. You can throw it in orange juice. You can do whatever you want with it. And I also see it being used in applications. I see it going down a similar route to creatine, but with number one, there's less negative attributes, because the media was really unfair to creatine at the beginning. They said it was a steroid. And I do think that that's the path it's going to go, where it's just going to be sold by the bulk powder and then put in applications. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And you certainly have your finger on the pulse of that market better than I do, but it's easy to see, just as a scientist, how the interest in this is not going to go away anytime soon, because the amount of evidence coming out to support it, all the more so in the kind of modern movement to promote a greater awareness of health and nutrition than we've ever seen before, in which thrills me. I think interest in ketones is not going to go down. But to your question, I have a lot of thoughts about TRT, where I think that I respect the power of testosterone in men, and yet I think in most men who will have lower or less than optimal, let's say, which is a squishy way of saying it, but less than optimal levels of testosterone, I actually don't think it's a fundamental deficit of his gonads. I think it's he has too much fat. And when fat tissue is too big, when fat cells are too big, they actually start acting like ovaries in the man, which is to say they will literally pull in testosterone that the testes worked hard to make and then release it as estrogen. That is literally something happening in men. And so I think very often we have the conversation backwards, where you'll hear the radio ad, hey, guy, are you overweight? It's because you're low T. Actually, if anything, in the average guy, you're low T because you're overweight. And so if a person adopts a strategy, including the perhaps if smart use of exogenous ketones to promote fat burning, which again, my lab has shown in humans in ketosis, metabolic rate in fat cells went up by 3 times. Their fat rate in their fat tissue metabolic rate was 3 times higher when they were in ketosis.